Well, good morning, Gateway. My name's Steve Harley. I'm our Taze Valley campus minister. If you were here last week, you know we started a series called 4 Days. And what we're doing in this series is we want to take a look at the resurrection of Christ from the perspective of what led up to it and what happened after as a result of it. So it's 4 days we're looking at: Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and Monday. Now last week we took a look at Friday, what we call Good Friday, the day that Jesus was crucified. And we especially keyed in on Jesus' statement on the cross when he said, "It is finished." His last statement, he said, "It is finished." And to the disciples, we said last week, to the disciples, they probably took this as a phrase of disappointment. You know, they probably thought it was finished. Their hopes, their dreams had been shattered. But when Jesus said, "It is finished," he used this Greek word, tetelestai, and really the statement that he was making was one of accomplishment and one of victory. Jesus had finished what he had set out to do. Our sin debt was paid in full. And so what you and I could never accomplish for ourselves, our own salvation, Jesus did for us. So that was Friday. Jesus suffered and bled and died. This morning we want to focus our attention on Saturday. So Saturday is much different than Friday. Saturday, the day after Jesus is crucified, the crowds have been dispersed. There's no more accusations from the Jewish leaders, no more stirring up of the crowds, no more insults, no more executions, no more bodies hanging on crosses, no more words said on the cross. Really, there's only silence because it's Saturday. It's Passover Sabbath. It's what we call today Holy Saturday. The body of Jesus had been taken off the cross and was placed in the tomb of Joseph of Arimathea. And this kind of sets the mood for what we have here on Saturday. It's just very quiet. There's silence. Now, we don't often like silence, do we? Last Saturday, I got a text from Kimmy Harris. She's our Taze Valley children's minister. And Kimmy's been dating a guy named Andy for a while, and things have been getting pretty serious between them. And so she texted me, she texted our staff, and here's what she said in the text. She said, "Hey guys, after a couple hard conversations this weekend with Andy, he decided that maybe we shouldn't date anymore. It was a tough decision, and you know how crazy I've been about him, but I'm headed home now. If you don't mind, I'd really love it if you all could say a prayer for us." When she texted this, again, it was last Saturday. It was April 1st, April Fool's Day. And I knew it was April Fool's Day because that morning we had a work day at the Taze Valley campus. And when I got up to go into the pantry to get my cereal before I left, I saw that all of the bags of cereal were in different boxes. My daughters had gotten up at 6:20 in the morning and switched all the bags in boxes. So I knew it was April Fool's Day because of them, the things they learned from their mother. And anyway, since it was April Fool's Day, Kimmy had sent this text, and I texted back, "April Fools, question mark, question mark, question mark." And then silence. No texts, no anything, nothing in reply. And I thought, oh my gosh, I am the biggest jerk. And my wife, when I showed her what I had done, she goes, "Oh my gosh, you're the biggest jerk." And I felt terrible, and the silence was awful. And finally, Kimmy texted back with a picture of her and Andy, and she was wearing an engagement ring. She hadn't lied. They decided not to date anymore, and they decided to be engaged instead. But I hated the silence, though. And silence isn't very easy, is it? In fact, typically, it's not easy at all. And our only biblical reference to what had happened on this particular Saturday, the day after Jesus' crucifixion, is from Matthew 27, 62 to 66. Other than that, we really don't know much. So here's what it says in Matthew 27, 62 to 66. It says, "The next day, the one after preparation day, the chief priests and the Pharisees went to Pilate. 'Sir,' they said, 'we remember that while he was still alive, that deceiver said, after 3 days I will rise again. So give the order for the tomb to be made secure until the 3rd day. Otherwise his disciples may come and steal the body and tell the people that he has been raised from the dead. This last deception will be worse than the first.' 'Take a guard,' Pilate answered. 'Go make the tomb as secure as you know how.' So they went and made the tomb secure by putting a seal on the stone and posting the guard." So this is what happens on Saturday. We're at the tomb. We know it's Saturday because Friday was the day to prepare for the Sabbath. It was preparation day. And so over a span of 3 days, Friday afternoon after Jesus was taken off the cross, all day Saturday, and into the early morning hours of Sunday, there's Jesus' body laying in the tomb of Joseph of Arimathea. Now today, there are two locations in Jerusalem where we believe, or people claim, was the location of Jesus' tomb. One is inside the Church of the Holy Sepulchre, and it was believed, pronounced that wrong every time, by the way, sepulchre. And I still pronounced it wrong. Anyway, it's in Jerusalem. It's in a church. And it was believed to have been the first built by Constantine in the 4th century. The other is in a location outside of the city in what's known as the Garden Tomb. So these are two places we speculate that maybe Jesus' tomb was, but we really don't know. But here's what I want you to notice. I want you to notice that in the silence of Saturday, there's a lot of suspicion. There's a lot of suspicion. A few months ago, we took my oldest daughter, Olivia, to Cincinnati Children's Hospital. She'd had some lingering issues with acid reflux, and we weren't really getting a lot of answers here. So we took her up there, and in our initial consultation, they asked us and asked her a lot of questions about what was going on. But at the end of the consultation, right before the nurse was about to leave, she said, "I have to ask you one more question, and I have to ask this of everybody." She goes, "Olivia, have you ever been touched inappropriately?" And all of a sudden, Olivia gave a look of confusion, and then she sat there in silence. And it was probably only seconds, but it seemed like forever that she sat there in silence. And in that time of silence, Sarah and I just looked at each other, and we were thinking, "Olivia, speak up. Olivia, say something." In that silence, we had so much running through our minds. We were thinking, what's the nurse thinking? Is Olivia too scared to say something because we did something wrong? Is that what the nurse is thinking? Are they going to call CPS on us because she's not saying anything? And then our minds turned to worse. Did someone actually touch my daughter inappropriately? And how long am I going to spend in prison once I tear that person apart who touched my daughter inappropriately? And I didn't want to prod her. Sarah didn't want to prod her to answer, so we wanted her to answer on her own so it didn't look like we were guilty, of anything. But inside, we're just like, "Say something. Please say something, Olivia." And finally, Olivia said, "Well, I don't understand what you mean. I don't understand the question." So we tried rephrasing it, and we were like, "Has anyone touched you in a way that made you feel uncomfortable?" Again, silence, and then, "I don't know what you're talking about. I don't understand." And finally, I had to get blunt. I said, "Olivia, has anyone ever put their hands on your chest or put their hands down your pants?" And she says, "Oh, goodness, no." I'm like, "Oh, why didn't you just say so?" The silence was just awful. And we felt like in that silence, the nurse was getting really suspicious of us. It was very uncomfortable. Well, in Matthew chapter 27, we just read that the Jewish leaders requested a guard to be posted in front of Jesus' tomb. And this is a unique detail to Matthew's gospel. Most likely, one of the rumors that was circulating at that time was, during Matthew's time, was that the disciples had stolen the body of Jesus in order to claim a resurrection. And so Matthew is the one who deals with this rumor by sharing the account of a guard detail. If the tomb is guarded, then there's no way that someone could come and steal the body, especially with that seal over it. But the religious leaders suspected that the disciples might just try and do that, might just try and steal this body, so they asked for a Roman guard to be posted there. Now, what's also interesting here is that the Pharisees show up. Now, there's no mention of the Pharisees the entire Passion Week, that is, from the time of Jesus' arrest through his crucifixion. Now, make no mistake, they were very active against Jesus during his ministry, but they were conspicuously absent during these few days, until now, until Saturday. You see, the Pharisees and the Sadducees had a mutual dislike for one another. And the chief priests, those are the ones who kind of get all the blame for the arrest and the crucifixion of Jesus, they were mostly all Sadducees. We don't really see very often these two religious groups coming together and teaming up against Jesus, although they had a common goal. They wanted to stop Jesus. We read that in Matthew 21, 45 to 46, that when the chief priests and the Pharisees heard Jesus' parables, they knew he was talking about them. They looked for a way to arrest him, but they were afraid of the crowd because the people held that he was a prophet. So with this verse in mind, added to the fact that these two groups came together in this important meeting with Pilate, we have a strong sign of how great a threat that they thought that Jesus was. They were suspicious. Now, did you know that Jesus could have had, or the Jews could have had Jesus put to death by stoning? He didn't have to be crucified. According to their law, if someone blasphemed against God, they could stone them to death. And their high priest had already convicted Jesus of blasphemy. But they weren't going to be satisfied with just stoning Jesus. They wanted Jesus to be crucified. And that's why they took the matter to Pontius Pilate. They had to have Roman involvement for a crucifixion. See, to the Jews, when someone was crucified, they equated that crucifixion with a curse from God. It was a mark that that person had been cursed by God. If they could get Jesus to be crucified, then they would squelch anyone from saying that this man truly was from God, that this man truly was the Messiah. Because how could someone be from God, truly be the Messiah when he's actually cursed by God? So they manipulated the system. They manipulated Pilate. They even sold themselves out by invoking the name and the power of Caesar to get Jesus crucified. And they did. But this curse from God would be null and void if Jesus raised from the dead, or if at least people thought that he was raised from the dead. And they knew of Jesus' predictions that he would rise again in 3 days, so they wanted to make sure that there was no chance that this would happen. They didn't believe in Jesus as the Messiah. They weren't going to believe, and they didn't want anyone else to believe it either. That's why they fought so hard to get Jesus crucified, and why they petitioned so hard to make sure that he stayed in the tomb, whether he was dead or alive. Because again, they weren't going to believe no matter what. Now, I probably shouldn't say this to you this morning, but if there was a good opportunity for you not to believe, it's this one. If there was a good day for you to say, I don't believe, it's Saturday. The great sacrificial drama of Calvary is over, and Sunday just seems like it's forever away. But today, on Saturday, there's just silence. Now, we learn in apologetics that many atheists, skeptics, and agnostics don't believe in a loving, personal God because they simply choose not to, even when they're presented with evidence for faith. They don't want to believe. They want the voices of reason and faith to be silenced. And I think this is what was going on with the Pharisees and the Sadducees. Many of them weren't going to believe in Jesus even if he raised from the dead. So they wanted to make sure that he wasn't seen if that happened too. I remember a few years back, you guys might remember, we had Frank Turek here speaking as a guest speaker. And he's the author of the book, I Don't Have Enough Faith to Be an Atheist. And he said at his presentations he would run into a lot of atheists, and he would ask them, he would just point blank ask them, if there was undeniable evidence that Jesus is who he said he is, that he is the Son of God, that he is the Messiah, that he died and he rose again, would you believe and follow him? And Turek said that most of the time, those people will say, no, I wouldn't. Even if he could prove it to be 100% true, beyond a shadow of a doubt, some people will still refuse to believe. Now, he told me, and he told us this, and I was a little bit skeptical, but then when he presented, I believe it was on his Sunday night presentation, there were atheists who were here, and they were asking questions, and he point blank asked them that question, if he could prove it beyond 100%, and the atheist that he asked that to said, no, I still wouldn't believe. But how about you? What would you do, or what do you do when life has dealt you a terrible blow? Like what had happened at Calvary when dreams were shattered. What do you do when God seems to be silent? When you don't seem to be hearing from him, what do you do? How do you respond? What do you do in the Saturdays of your life? Do you get suspicious? Do you begin to think that there's no hope? That there's no way out? Do you suspect that God has abandoned you? That he doesn't care? Or maybe that he's even out to get you? There was a lot of suspicion on that Saturday after Calvary. But I want us now to see what was going on with those who did believe in Jesus, the ones who were following Jesus. And we see in the silence of Saturday that there's fear. There's a lot of fear. With the disciples starting Thursday night, all day Friday, all day Saturday, even into Sunday evening, there's this sense of fear. In John 20, verse 19, we read about how Jesus finally appeared to the disciples on that Easter evening. And it says this, on the evening of that first day of the week when the disciples were together with the doors locked for fear of the Jewish leaders, Jesus came and stood among them and said, "Peace be with you." And the assumption is that the disciples had been hiding there ever since Jesus was crucified. They were fearful. They were terrified. They were scared that they were going to end up like Jesus, arrested and flogged and crucified. In fact, I think one of the saddest verses in the Gospels is just a few verses back from our main text. In Matthew 26:56, it says about when Jesus was arrested, it says, "Then all the disciples deserted him and fled." Isn't that sad? It seems that when Jesus may have needed his disciples the most, they ran away scared. And we might wonder why. Why would they run after all the miracles that they had seen? After all the times that they had heard Jesus speak and with such authority? Why would they run now? I mean, don't we just find just a few moments before that, Peter swinging a sword in the garden, and he cuts off the ear of the servant of the high priest Malchus, and Peter's ready to fight and die for Jesus. And then Jesus even heals the ear of the man right in front of everyone's eyes, but then just moments later, Peter hides, runs away afraid, as do the other disciples. Have you ever been afraid for your life? I think we've talked about this before, but I think it's worth sharing. Several years back, there was a church in Stockton, California that was robbed. They were robbed on a Sunday morning, right during the middle of the service. During the service, several masked gunmen, they came into the service and they robbed everyone. They took people's wallets, purses, jewelry, watches, and then the gunmen ran out of the church and took all of their stolen goods. Well, once the robbers got out of the church, the people were weeping, they were crying, they were screaming, they were fearful, and so the pastor got up and he tried to address everyone to try and calm their fears. He finally got them calmed down enough that he could speak over top of them, and he says, "Listen, folks, don't stress out. Don't be scared. I set the whole thing up." He said, "You can get your wallets and purses and stuff back at the end of the service. I set the whole thing up." Now, by the way, this pastor is no longer the pastor at that church, and this illustration made its way into national news, and not in a good way. So he says to the people, "I set this whole thing up because today I want to talk to you about how you rob God." Now, we can't do that in West Virginia, can we? There'd be a shootout. I mean, that is just a horrifying illustration that he did. And by the way, I've done some stupid stuff in ministry. I've said some stupid stuff, just dumb things. There are probably times you should just take this microphone away from me. But just so you know, we at Gateway would never, ever, ever do something like that. So if anyone comes in and they got a weapon and they're making threats, I expect at least like 50 of you to take that guy out. And I think 50 is about the number of women who are packing heat in here. So, but law enforcement officers, they teach people the response of run, hide, fight. Run, hide, fight when there's an active shooter in the building. And then this is a good response. But notice what's the last option in this response. It's fight. And the first one is run. The idea is that untrained people need to get out if they can and let the trained professionals with guns come in and do their job. But none of us really knows what will you do when this kind of fear grips us, when it takes a hold of us. Will the fight kick in, or will the flight kick in? You know, some of you especially are military and are first responders. You're the first ones in. You're the first ones to remain calm. You're the first ones to run into the danger instead of run away from it. You fight in a fearful situation. Yet some of you who are so brave in situations like that resort to acting out in ways that you normally never would when God gives you an extended period of silence. I have a friend I was talking to, and he's a tough guy. I see him in the gym all the time. He's working out. He kick a lot of people's butts in here. And I was talking to him, and he said, "Steve, I need you to pray for me. Things aren't going so well with my marriage." I said, "Sure will." And then I ended up meeting with he and his wife, and he had made the decision to divorce his wife. There was no biblical reason for it, but he had made this decision. And so I came in and I was talking with him, and I said, "So you've decided divorce is the answer?" He said, "Yes." I said, you say you're a Christian. So have you prayed about this? And if you did, do you really think that God's answer was to divorce your wife? And his response? "Well, I did pray about it, but I haven't heard from God about it." I said, "So in God's silence, you thought the best idea was to run from your marriage?" I told him, "That's a bunch of bull. And by the way, God has already spoken about this in his word. Don't you give up on your marriage. Don't you run and hide. Get in there, and you get in there and you fight for your marriage. You fight for your family. Quit your running." But sometimes in the wake of God's seeming silence, we get gripped with fear. And in our fear, we lose sight of what God might be up to. But weren't the disciples, weren't they ready for this? Shouldn't they have been? I mean, Jesus had warned them. He'd warned them that he would suffer, that he would be rejected, that he would be killed. So why weren't they prepared? I can't really answer the why question. But what I can do is I can look at church tradition. And it tells us what happened to these men at their own deaths as they carried the gospel to the world. We see that Andrew was crucified. Bartholomew was crucified. James, the son of Jesus, was stoned to death. James, the son of Alphaeus, was crucified. James, the son of Zebedee, was killed by the sword. Matthew was crucified. Philip was crucified. Simon was crucified. Thaddeus was killed by arrows. Peter was crucified upside down because he felt he was unworthy to die in the same way as Jesus. Thomas died of a spear thrust, and only John died naturally as an old man. But he was exiled to the Isle of Patmos because of his faith in Jesus. So what changed these men from cowards to courageous missionaries? There's one thing: the resurrection. Once they saw and heard from the resurrected Jesus, they turned the world upside down with the gospel. Again, what about you? In the silence of Saturday, what are you doing? Are you growing fearful in his silence? Is your fear blocking you from seeing that God may be up to something even bigger? Well, finally, what I want you to see in the silence of Saturday is, although there was suspicion and although there was fear, God is at work. Sometimes we wonder what Jesus was doing while he was in the tomb. Well, the only real biblical reference to what he was doing is found in a very, very complicated and debated passage. It's in 1 Peter 3, 18-20. It says this: "For Christ also suffered once for sins, the righteous for the unrighteous, to bring you to God. He was put to death in the body, but made alive in the spirit." It's a very cool passage right there. Very cool verse. But here's where it gets a little bit complicated, and here's where it gets a little bit confusing. It says, "After being made alive, he went and made proclamation to the imprisoned spirits, to those who were disobedient long ago, when God waited patiently in the days of Noah while the ark was being built. In it only a few people, 8 in all, were saved through water." Now, this is an obscure passage, and scholars have debated this over the years, what this really means. But it seems to go along with what the Apostle Paul says in Ephesians 4:9. He says, what does he ascended mean, except that he also descended to the lower earthly regions? Some translations say to the depths of the earth. It seems like what Jesus was doing was proclaiming to the gospel to the people who had already died. People in a place the Jews called Sheol, and the Romans and Greeks called Hades. Now, again, understand that this passage was one of the most difficult passages in the New Testament to explain. There are some people that believe that Jesus was giving the wicked people who had already died an opportunity to accept the gospel and be saved. But that doesn't seem to fit the Greek language. It was more of a proclamation that Jesus was making, not a preaching for a response. And it also doesn't jive at all with the rest of Scripture. Hebrews 9:27 tells us, just as people are destined to die once, and after that, to face judgment. There's nowhere in Scripture that gives us an indication that people have a second chance after they die. So then what was Jesus doing? In a nutshell, just as brief as I can be, I believe that Jesus, between his death and his resurrection on that Saturday, Jesus went into the grave, he went to Sheol, and he proclaimed, he announced, he declared his victory over sin and death. I think this makes sense in light of how Peter talks about baptism in the next few verses, about baptism being his and your declaration of Christ's victory over sin and death in your life. Now, I may not have it all right here. Again, it's a complicated passage, but here's the main point. When we think there's silence from God, maybe he's not being silent at all. Maybe he is proclaiming our victory in all of the spiritual and heavenly realms. When we think all is lost, he is shouting that it's not, that he has won. In times of God's seeming silence in your life, I want to challenge you and encourage you to trust him. Trust that he's up to something greater. Trust that he's up to something better. And maybe he's working behind the scenes. Maybe it's out of the line of your sight, but he's up to something. So I challenge you to trust him. On that silent, holy Saturday, Jesus was not inactive. He was proclaiming victory over sin and death, and he was getting ready to prove that victory the very next day. And so maybe you're living in the silence of Saturday. Take heart. Sunday is coming. Let's pray. Heavenly Father, I thank you that we can trust you, even when we can't always hear you, even when we're having trouble seeing what you're doing. We know that you are at work for our good and for your glory. And so I pray that today we will learn to trust you more because you are trustworthy. You've never broken a promise to us even though we've broken promises. You've never been unfaithful though we've been unfaithful many, many times. God, I pray that you would give us more faith to believe that you are trustworthy, that you are worth depending on, relying on, living for, and submitting to. And so when there are times when you seem like you're silent and distant, God, I pray that we would still trust you. Trust that you're up to something. Trust that you are working, again, for our good and for your glory. And so today, I just want to pray for those in this room, maybe those who will be listening online later, those who are struggling. They're not hearing from you. There's something blocking them from hearing you, or maybe you're just being silent for a little while. That they would rest in that silence, and that they would rest in you, and that they would learn to trust you, that they would be patient on you, because we know that you are good. You are good, God, and we trust you and submit to you. It's in Jesus' name I pray. Amen. Well, this morning we want to offer an invitation to you. If you've never accepted Christ as your Lord, if you've never trusted him for salvation, if you've never submitted to him in baptism, we want to offer you an invitation today to accept the grace that he is offering you, the salvation that is free to you, because he paid the price. So if you have a decision to make about Jesus, I'm going to be up here and Joel's going to be up here to your right. Or maybe you have another decision that you need to make. Maybe it's one where you need to commit to being a member here. You've been coming here for a little while, and you need to put down roots in a church home and be a part of a church family. Or maybe today you're just struggling. Maybe you are living in that silence, and you're struggling, and you just need some prayer. We'd love to pray with you as well. So if you have a decision to make while we sing this song, come on up, and we'd love to talk with you. Will you stand and sing with us?